Tune in to This Morning with Alex Jensen every weekday morning from 7 to 9 on TBS EFM.
Well, very good morning to you. Now, the Korea International Cooperation Agency, or KOICA, is rising as an important player among global financial aid groups. Recently, a group of Chinese government officials visited Korea to share and also learn from our experience and aid development strategies. Also, Thailand has adopted KOICA's Official Development Assistance, or ODA, model that you may hear referred to during the course of this interview, and established its own agency. To hear more about all these accomplishments and more, we have in the studio Kim-Young-mok, the president of KOICA. It's a privilege to have you with us. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you for coming in. From what I've just said there, it seems that Korea's development assistance efforts are really setting an example for other countries. How was the recent visit from those Chinese officials?
I think, first of all, Chinese intention to work with us is very interesting, not only in terms of Korea-China relations, but also in terms of global development community's point of view, because China has been pretty much criticized, even though they were one of the biggest donors in the world, by African and South American countries, because Chinese were focusing too much on their own interests rather than recipient interest. And there are a lot of pressure on the way of Chinese were doing, because even though international communities don't know how to measure Chinese donations, so Chinese are now very much sensitive to those kind of criticism. They would like to accommodate the standard and rules of the international community. I think that would be one reason for them to share with Korea how you can reconcile the national interest and international recommendation and standard. And also they were very much interested in how Korea became so fast one of DAC member, and then how Korea is surviving in the big donors, among big donors, with a small amount of donations and then skills. So Chinese were very much interested in what we are doing, and we promise to meet frequently and study on the joint programs for which we can work together.
When you put it like that, I mean, it's incredible, the South Korean story. We've talked about it on the show before, how this country literally rose from the ashes, and KOICA rising in turn to become a key global aid giver. What are the main ODA, or Official Development Assistance, programs that are carried out by KOICA, and can you just take us through those policies a bit?
Well, I think KOICA, if we have a policy, we would like to be supportive and part of recipient countries' overall national economic development. Second one is that we would like to be one making result and projects sustainable and operable, not only just giving and forget, but we keep them moving and make it sustainable economy unit. Third policy, we would like working with all kinds of partners.
Yes.
Not only domestic partners, but international partners, organizations, private funds, and others, and companies. Maybe another policy with us is that we would like to put as much as human capitals. Your heart, your wisdom, your expertise, your volunteerism, that will make our donations more effective and more valuable for the people who are receiving. So under this policy, we are doing maybe 300 or 400 different type of projects in health, medicine, education training, and energy industry building, and many others. And also we are sending about 2,500 volunteers and consultants to other countries. We are receiving 5,000 per year trainees from more than 100 countries.
I mean, all this will be a source of immense pride for our Korean listeners, and I'm sure for, international residents in Korea who are pleased to hear of what our adopted country is doing abroad. But what is it about Korean ODA that draws the attention from other countries in your experience?
Maybe I think Koreans have many things to be proud of. One of this pride should be that we transform very rapidly in a short period of time from really poor nation to a really full-fledged democracy and advanced country. That is, I think, one character that Korea projects to others. Second thing, maybe Korea is very famous for its ICT industry and culture, and also rural development, what we call SEMAR. I think these three elements are attracting not only eyes of recipients countries, but also donors and international community.
We've seen the government on a whole range of footings look to bolster South Korea's position on the international stage, and it really feels as though what KOICA is doing is, in that soft power sense, really helping project that process even further. I just wonder about the relationship, though, with other donors and recipients. It's this whole society of donors and recipients that really, unless we examine this closely, we're not necessarily aware of. Can you tell us a bit more about how the country is also looking to strengthen those bonds?
Well, as I explained to you, one of our policies is to keep human capital as much as possible with your sincerity. So when we discuss about what we must do with the recipient countries or recipient organizations, we would like to make the most of, select one they think to make most of what they would like to use. So I think our strength is to work with them through skinships and being in the middle of them, not only just spreading check and then, I don't know, it's up to you. We don't want that kind of attitude.
Literally hands-on.
We would like to be in there. I think our methodology is being studied by other organizations, our friendly organizations, international development organizations. So we are expanding exchanges with those organizations and experts.
You mentioned this Semal movement before, and that's been a fascinating aspect of what Korea's had to offer because of, not just learning from how Korea rose from the ashes, but also the whole nation's development outside of big cities per se, and developing countries are clearly attracted by that. Can you just explain a little bit, though, for listeners who aren't familiar, the history and the impact that that's had on this country?
Well, I think the Semal movement is well known, maybe better known to overseas leaders than at least Korean young generation.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. In many cases, leaders are mentioning raising Semal Undong for their country, even before I mentioned. So they have studied, they have books on Semal in Korea. So they studied. So my thinking is that they really think that Semal can be one of their strategy which can transform their country. In many cases, a huge population live in rural area, in very backward and in desperate situations, while urban areas were showing towers and buildings, but vast majority are still living in extreme poverty.
Yes.
I think that any leaders in those countries is natural to think that introduce any strategy which can help transformation. I think they are being attracted by Semal, which made Korea during 70s and eliminate gap between rural and urban area in such a short period of time of 4 to 5 years. I think that is the really attractive point for them.
And when you bring in the high-tech current nature of Korea, it feels like Semal can be sped up on fast forward almost because of the communications. I mean, when you look back at what Korea did at a time when you didn't have mobile communications, it's all the more remarkable.
Yeah, so that's why we call our KOICA's ODA Semal smart Semal. That means we must be able to let them apply, let them use the technologies, appropriate technology we can offer, ICT, and for agricultural elevations, livestock, technology, biology, whatever. We have many technologies offered at this modern time, which we didn't have in 1970s.
Yes.
So our goal is to let them enjoy overall progress in UN MDGs, like sanitation, health, education, women's rights, children's participation, whatever.
Yes.
By using all kinds of technology available. This is what we are trying to do.
It makes a lot of sense. You've done and are doing so much. What can KOICA's goals for the future be? How can you progress further?
Yeah. KOICA, to be honest with you, still a small learning institution. And Korea's ODA is smaller compared to British and others. You know, we like British very much because Britain is one of the most leading and exemplary country who is really abiding by the commitment and having developed a lot of different methodology. So we are making our relations very close, not only with the USA, but I must really work on our relations with the TFID, British, and comes along Japanese JICA, France AFD, and many other countries, emerging and advanced countries. But at the same time, we are more trying to work with and benefit from thoughts and data and expertise from World Bank, a lot of UN organizations. This is what we are trying to do for now.
Well, it's nice to hear you speaking so positively about Britain. I mean, in my household, we wave both South Korean and British flags. But with this comparison that you made, I find it all the more interesting that Britain is at the top of the world's soft power list. I talked about soft power before. A lot of that comes from things like Harry Potter and James Bond. But South Korea also has increasing cultural influence. But do you think it also comes from these kinds of efforts that don't get the same Hollywood representation?
Well, I think Hollywood representation is sometimes effective, you know. When we reach out to villages, they don't know about anything Korea, but they know some movie star's name, they know some drama's name. It really helps for you to get in touch with them and work together.
Build that trust.
Yes. And you mentioned the workers in Korea from overseas. We have a plan, and institutions collect them and training skills and giving them Korean language before they go to Korea. So I think a cultural thing is one part of this bondage, and then one way, very effective way to increase the efficiency of our donations, so our assistance. So, you know, Britain is not only, you know, famous for soft power, but also marine power, naval power.
Yes,
but,
there is that too.
You know, what I was impressed by discussion with the British leader, TFI, the leader, was that Britain has a policy to educate people from young age about official assistance and relations with the international community, helping people in poverty. So they explained that about tens of thousands of private schools have a sistership with many schools in developing countries. I think that is the real strength of Britain, UK.
Well, I hope we can bring the best of what some of these other countries are doing and continue to share what the best of what Korea is doing with others. It does sound like the sort of partnership that people dream of. Thank you so much for taking the time as well to come here in the studio and tell us about it.
Thank you very much, Alex. I had a good discussion with you. Thank you.
Our pleasure. You've been hearing the voice there of the president of KOICA, which is the Korea International Cooperation Agency, doing so much in the way of aid around the world and sharing with would-be donors as well. Kim Young-mok.
Find us on 101.3 megahertz every weekday morning from 7:05.